Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at a really tragic case. It's from California, and it really exposes the devastating potential of conflict within a family. We're focusing specifically on a very difficult relationship between a mother-in-law and her son-in-law. It's a story that seems to start with good intentions, but just spirals into something truly awful. Our guide for this deep dive today is primarily a detailed account and analysis from a YouTube channel that looked into the case. That's the source material you shared with us. It really lays out the timeline, the people involved, and how the tensions just kept building until this shocking end. So our mission really is to unpack what happened, try to understand the very complex dynamics in this family, and face the heartbreaking results. How do tensions like this escalate so catastrophically? Okay, let's start by setting the scene, introducing the key people. First, there's Cynthia Saba. When the main events happened in 2014, Cynthia was 63 years old, born February 11th, 1951. So the final event actually happened on her birthday. Cynthia had a daughter, Laura Baca. How did the source describe Laura? Cheerful, respectful, generally a bit introverted, maybe enjoyed her quiet time, but had good manners, good social skills when needed, like music too. Okay, so Laura meets Geoward Eustaquio. They get married in 2001. Now this was Geoward's second marriage. He already had two sons from his first, and his work. He was a real estate agent, but also in the military reserve. And that military background, well, it comes up later. From the outside, Laura and Geoward seemed like a pretty good couple, supportive of each other. After they married, they built a house, and they chose Fallbrook, California, which is significant because, well, that's where Cynthia, Laura's mother, lived, same town.
Right, and that choice, building right there in the same town, maybe it was about being close to family initially, wanting that connection, but it definitely set the stage for what happened later. It meant constant proximity. Laura and Geoward also had two children together, so 4 kids for Geoward in total, though the older two didn't live with them there in Fallbrook.
Okay, so for over 10 years, things seem relatively normal. Maybe the usual family stuff, ups and downs, nothing hinting at, the source points to 2013 as the year things really started to change. And it began with Cynthia's health. She suffered a stroke.
Yeah, a stroke. Basically, blood flow to the brain gets cut off, brain cells start to die. Recovery, it's really variable. Cynthia survived, and she did make some progress with physical therapy, but the source suggests she wasn't, back to 100%, not fully independent.
So Laura, seeing her mom struggling a bit, living alone, she gets concerned, wants to help. She invites Cynthia to come live with them, with her family in Fallbrook. The idea seemed practical, right? Cynthia could recover with family around and maybe help out with the grandkids, too.
And the setup is important here. Cynthia didn't move right into the main house. It was more like a small, separate house, or maybe a section attached to Laura and Geoward's place. Cynthia lived on the second floor of this kind of annex. And the original plan, the source stresses this, was that it was temporary, just until she got stronger. Not forever, but even with that slight separation, they were right there, living essentially on top of each other.
At first, having Grandma nearby seemed like a good thing, helpful for everyone. But it didn't take long, really, for friction to start, big friction, especially between Cynthia and Geoward. They started arguing a lot, and small things apparently just blew up into these major fights. So what were they fighting about? The source gets into specifics. A big one was Geoward's parenting. Cynthia thought he was way too strict, inflexible, even harsh with the kids. She'd apparently step in, comfort the grandkids, and then tell Geoward directly, be gentler, be more reasonable.
And you can see the clash, can't you? Geoward's side, according to the source, was that his military background. It gave him this focus on discipline. He thought that structure was crucial for raising kids, right? Tough love, basically, for their own good. The kids reportedly found him strict, felt pressure. They also sort of understood he meant well. But for Cynthia and Geoward, it wasn't just about chores, right? It was this fundamental clash over how to raise the family, playing out daily, control, values.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was another huge issue, Cynthia's smoking.
Yeah.
Which is kind of shocking considering she'd just had a stroke. But she kept smoking, sometimes initially inside her part of the house. Geoward hated it. His main concern was the kids' health, secondhand smoke.
Oh yeah, that really ramped up the tension. The arguments about smoking got bad. Eventually, Cynthia agreed, okay, she'd smoke outside. But then, according to her claims in the source, the conflict didn't stop. She alleged Geoward would, harass her even outside, spraying her with a garden hose while she was smoking on the lawn, trying to drive her away because of the smell or just pure antagonism. She even claimed he did that to her granddaughter once, when the granddaughter was visiting and smoking outside. Imagine spraying a 63-year-old woman with a hose. It just shows the level of hostility they'd reached. It wasn't just about the smoke anymore.
Wow. So this awful tension just simmers through 2013. Remember, the plan was for Cynthia to move back home by year-end, but December comes and she changes her mind, says she's staying indefinitely.
And her reasons for staying, or at least the reasons she gave, they add another really dark layer. The source says Cynthia claims she saw bruises on Laura's arm. She suspected Geoward was physically hurting her daughter. Maybe grabbing her too hard, dragging or pulling, she said. Something like that. So Cynthia felt she had to stay. To protect Laura, protect the grandkids from potential violence. That was her justification.
The source also mentions another specific incident, something Cynthia called the absolute last straw. She claimed that during a really nasty argument, Geoward deliberately threw her deceased husband's ashes on the floor, broke the urn. She said the disrespect, it was devastating. And that, she claimed, was what finally pushed her to buy a gun for protection.
But here's where the investigation uncovered something crucial, something that really challenges her story. While Cynthia pointed to that ashes incident as the trigger for buying the gun, the police found out she'd actually bought the handgun and even practiced shooting it about 3 weeks before that alleged incident with the ashes supposedly happened, and critically, 3 weeks before the shooting itself. So that timeline. It led investigators to suspect this wasn't a sudden act of passion. It looked more like premeditation, planned. That discrepancy is huge.
Yeah, it really changes the picture.
Okay, so that brings us to the day it all exploded, February 11th, 2014.
Okay.
Cynthia's 63rd birthday. Geoward was getting ready that morning. He was going to his daughter's spelling bee at school. Cynthia comes downstairs. She's dressed casually like in a basketball shirt. And according to her account, Geoward makes some kind of nasty comment about how she looks, calls her ghetto or skank, something really derogatory. Cynthia said that comment, especially on her birthday, that was it. The final insult. She felt utterly disrespected. So she turns around, goes back upstairs, and she gets the gun. The .38 caliber handgun she'd bought holds 5 rounds.
In her confession, it lays out what happened next. It's brutal. She loaded the gun with those 5 rounds, went back downstairs. Geoward was walking towards the laundry room, had a basket of clothes, she just shot him immediately. 5 times. He was hit, but incredibly, still alive, trying to get away, fighting for his life. Cynthia didn't stop. She went back, reloaded the gun with 5 more bullets, 10 shots ready now. And she went after him, pursued him through the house. Neighbors heard the first shots, called 911, and while they were on the line with dispatch, they heard more shots, the 6th, 7th, 8th. Geoward somehow managed to get into a room and lock the door, trying to find safety.
But Cynthia wasn't done. The source details. She went and got a 3rd set of 5 rounds. That's 15 rounds in total she prepared. And then she just started shooting through the locked door. Through the glass, into the room where he was trapped, just kept firing. The sheer number of shots, 15 prepared, 12 actually hit him. It speaks volumes about her intent at that moment.
Geoward died there. 12 gunshot wounds. The police found evidence of his struggle everywhere. Blood trails through the house showing his desperate attempt to escape. And according to Cynthia's own account, as he was trying to get away, wounded, he apparently cried out, "Grandma, I love you!" She said she heard it, but she didn't stop shooting. After firing all those shots, she didn't check on him, didn't call 911, she just walked out of the house. The neighbors' calls, hearing the shots, the cries for help, that's what brought the police. They arrived, went inside, and found Geoward's body. Laura and the children, thankfully, weren't home that morning. Police had to contact Laura, tell her the horrific news. They couldn't find Cynthia, initially. And Laura, knowing how bad things were between her mom and husband, she immediately suspected her mother might be involved. The animosity was that intense.
You can imagine the police, right? Maybe hesitant at first to think a 63-year-old grandmother. But when they couldn't reach her after something this violent at her home, finding her became the priority.
They finally located Cynthia later that day, around 3 p.m. And where was she? Just sitting calmly at her favorite local coffee shop. The police interview, parts of it were recorded and went viral later. They asked her about Geoward. She gives this thumbs down gesture, calls him crude to everybody, said nobody else could stop him, basically implying she had to do it. And then, this is the really chilling part on the video. She asked the police, "Is he dead?" They confirm, yes, Geoward is dead. And her response, caught on camera, "Good, good, good, thank you." Just apparent relief. Maybe satisfaction. It was deeply disturbing.
Yeah, and she then confessed everything. The details of the shooting, reloading multiple times, firing 15 shots total. Her actions right after the shooting were also, well, strange, according to the source. She apparently drove to a Denny's, had a meal, then spent 2 hours at a casino. Just seemed completely unfazed before ending up at the coffee shop where they found her. That calmness right after, it's hard to process.
So Cynthia was arrested, charged with first-degree murder, which means the prosecution believed it was planned, premeditated.
Right. And that key evidence, as we mentioned, was the gun purchase. Buying it and practicing with it 3 weeks before the shooting. That really undercut her claim that it was a sudden heat-of-the-moment thing triggered by the alleged insult or the ashes incident. The prosecution argued she planned this.
At the trial, Laura testified. She did confirm Geoward had hurt her physically in the past, like grabbing her arm hard. So that lent some credence to Cynthia's claim about wanting to protect her daughter, though obviously not justifying murder. Cynthia's defense also tried to argue the stroke might have affected her judgment, impaired her decision-making.
But the source mentions a psychologist assessed her for the court. And the conclusion was pretty clear. The stroke hadn't significantly impacted her cognitive abilities or her understanding of right and wrong. Her actions getting the gun, practicing, the sequence of the shooting, reloading, pursuing him, they all showed planning, awareness, intent. That was the expert testimony.
So the verdict came down March 23, 2017. Cynthia Siva was found guilty. First-degree murder.
And the sentence reflected that. Life in prison. Eligible for parole only after 50 years, given her age. I mean, that's effectively a life sentence. She'll almost certainly die in prison.
It's just, the human cost is immense here. Laura, caught in this impossible situation, spoke in court, said she loved both her mother and her husband. You can't even imagine. She said something really heartbreaking, like, no one wins, just sadness left with me and my children.
Cynthia did apologize in court to Geoward's family. Expressed remorse then, which was quite different from that initial reaction.
Yeah, and Geoward's sister also spoke at the sentencing, shared her family's pain. She said Cynthia didn't just kill Geoward, she took away a brother, an uncle, a son, a father, and that Cynthia deserved life in prison. She also mentioned something striking the source picked up on. She had initially suspected Geoward's oldest son might have done it. Apparently he had some issues, asked for money. She never imagined it could be the mother-in-law. It just shows how hidden these dynamics can be, even from family. Looking at the online reactions mentioned in the source, people were really divided, deeply affected. Some felt sympathy for Cynthia, saw her as a mother protecting her daughter, maybe from abuse. Others were just horrified by the calculation involved, her apparent lack of remorse initially, and especially the impact on the kids. They called the children the real victims. One comment really stood out, pointing out the fear and pain those kids must live with, knowing their grandmother seemed happy their father was dead. It's just devastating.
Yeah. And I think the takeaway from the source analysis is pretty clear, if painful. In conflicts like this, violence driven by these deep, unresolved family tensions, there are no winners. Ever. All those issues, the strict parenting, the smoking, the disrespect, the fear of abuse, they just spiraled completely out of control into this irreversible tragedy. And all that's left is just immense sadness and suffering for everyone involved.
Reflecting on this whole deep dive, it's just such a stark reminder how tensions simmering under the surface in families, even seemingly normal ones, can just erupt, reaching a breaking point with consequences that are just unthinkable.
Absolutely. It really makes you think about the fragility of those close relationships, doesn't it? How different people in the same house can see things so incredibly differently. And the profound, lasting trauma that comes when things boil over into violence like this. It leaves you wondering about those points where maybe, just maybe, things could have gone differently. And the terrible cost when they don't.
Thank you for joining us as we explored the source material on this incredibly difficult case. We really appreciate you being here for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.